The blue sky of Kepler 442b turned dark as the first ships appeared above the clouds. High Counselor Zephys stood on the crystal balcony of the Grand Assembly, watching the black dots grow larger in the distance. His pale blue skin turned almost white with fear as he realized what was coming. The Volanti had lived in peace for over 3,000 years. Their world was beautiful, with crystal cities that caught the light of twin suns and forests that sang in the wind. They had no armies, no weapons, no need for violence. They solved problems by talking, by sharing, by caring for each other. War was something they read about in old books from other worlds, but the Korvax Empire did not care about peace. Zephys turned away from the window and walked quickly to the communication center. The other council members were already there, their faces full of worry. The large screen showed the readings from their space sensors. 50 ships, maybe more, all armed, all heading straight for their world. Lyrana, their best scientist, looked up from her computer. Her hands were shaking. The ships match Korvax design. They will be here in 2 days. Everyone in the room became very quiet. They all knew what happened when the Korvax came to a world. First, they demanded surrender. Then they took everything. The people who survived became slaves. The people who did not were forgotten. "We have to send the message now," said Council Member Thyrus. He was old, even for a Volanti, and his voice was tired. "Before they block our communications." Zephys nodded. They had prepared for this day, hoping it would never come. The distress beacon was ready. It would go out to every known civilization in their part of space. But they had been very careful about what kind of help they asked for. "Read the message one more time," Zephys said. Lyrana touched her screen and began to read. "To all peaceful and civilized species, the world of Kepler 442b faces invasion by the Korvax Empire. We seek diplomatic assistance and refugee support from any advanced civilization committed to nonviolent solutions. We are a peaceful people who have never known war. We need help from others who understand the value of life and the importance of protecting the innocent. We specifically request aid from civilized species only. We want nothing to do with violent races or primitive warriors. Please help us find a peaceful solution or provide safe passage for our people." "Send it," Zephys said. "Send it to everyone." The message went out in all directions, traveling faster than light to every world with communication equipment. The Volanti could only hope that someone good would hear it and come to help. Far away on a small moon orbiting a yellow star, Jake Morrison was having a boring night shift. He worked at Luna Base, monitoring space communications for Earth's government. Most nights nothing happened. Sometimes he got weather reports from mining ships. Sometimes he got news from Earth's colonies. Tonight felt like another quiet night. Then his computer started making noise. Jake sat up in his chair and looked at the screen. A new signal was coming in from deep space. It was not from any human ship or base. The computer was trying to translate the language. After a few minutes, words appeared on his screen in English. Jake read the message twice, then 3 times. His eyes got wide. He reached for his phone and called his boss. "Director Hayes, this is Morrison at Luna Base. You need to see this right now." Director Linda Hayes was asleep when her phone rang. She had been running Earth's deep space communications for 10 years, and emergency calls in the middle of the night were never good news. She got dressed quickly and drove to Luna Base. Jake showed her the message. Linda read it carefully, then called her team. Within an hour, the communication center was full of people. Scientists, translators, and military officers all crowded around Jake's computer screen. "This is real," said Dr. Carter, the xenobiology expert. "The language patterns are completely alien. No human could fake this. The location data puts them about 47 light-years away," added Captain Rodriguez, who had been called in from Earth's military. "That is close enough for our new ships to reach." Linda looked at the message again. The aliens were asking for peaceful help. They wanted diplomats and refugee ships. They did not want warriors or violent species. She understood what they were asking for, but she also understood what they were going to get. "Contact the Terran Defense Corps," she told her assistant. Tell them we have a first contact situation that requires immediate response. Ma'am, Captain Rodriguez said quietly, they are asking for peaceful helpers. They do not want military involvement. Linda looked at the military officer. Alex Rodriguez was a good man, but he was also a soldier. He had fought in 3 different conflicts and had never lost a battle. His ship, the TDF Resilience, was one of Earth's most powerful warships. The aliens would take one look at him and run away in terror. But Linda also knew something else. The Korvax Empire had been mentioned in other alien communications that Earth had intercepted. They were not the type to respond to diplomatic talks. They were conquerors. And 47 light-years away, peaceful aliens were about to learn a very hard lesson about the universe. Captain, Linda said, I understand their request. But sometimes people do not get what they ask for. Sometimes they get what they need instead. 2 hours later, the TDF Resilience was loading supplies for immediate departure. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge watching his crew prepare for hyperspace jump. Colonel Kate Sullivan was in the cargo bay, making sure her Marines had everything. They needed. Kate Sullivan was a career soldier who had never lost a Marine under her command. She was tough, smart, and absolutely deadly in combat. Her battalion was made up of Earth's best fighters, men and women who had trained for years to handle any situation. They were loading their gear for what command called a humanitarian mission. But Kate knew better. She had read the reports about the Korvax Empire. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They took what they wanted and destroyed the rest. The peaceful aliens who had sent that message were about to meet the kind of enemy that their civilization had no idea how to handle. Colonel, one of her sergeants asked, are we really going to help these aliens? Kate looked at the young Marine. His name was Danny Wright, and he had joined the military to protect people. That was what most humans did. They joined the military to protect their families, their friends, their way of life. It was a very human thing to do. Yes, Wright, Kate said. We are going to help them. We are going to help them in the only way we know how. Back on Kepler 442b, the Volanti were watching their communication equipment, hoping for replies to their message. The Korvax ships were getting closer. Soon they would enter the atmosphere and begin their attack. Time was running out. Then their computers detected an incoming ship. It was moving fast, faster than anything they had seen before. The ship was not Korvax, it was something else. Something new. High Counselor, Lorana called out. We are getting a response to our distress call. A ship is coming. It will arrive before the Korvax do. Zephys felt hope for the first time in days. What do we know about them? Lorana worked at her computer trying to analyze the incoming ship. What she found made her very confused and a little afraid. The ship was heavily armed. It had thick armor and powerful weapons. It looked like it was built for war, not for rescue missions. High Counselor, she said slowly. I think this ship is from a species called humans. They come from a world called Earth. But their ship, it looks like a warship. Zephys felt his hope start to fade. They had asked for peaceful help. Why was a warship coming instead? What kind of species built ships that looked like weapons? What kind of people would come to help strangers by bringing guns? He was about to find out. The TDF Resilience dropped out of hyperspace with a sound like thunder breaking across the void. Captain Alex Rodriguez stood on the bridge, watching the twin suns of the Kepler system fill his main screen. His ship was built for war, with thick armor plates and weapon systems that could crack open asteroids. It was not the kind of ship that peaceful aliens expected to see when they asked for help. Captain, called out Lieutenant Barnes from the sensor station. I am reading multiple ships in the outer system. Korvax design. They are attacking the third planet's orbital stations. Alex looked at the tactical display. Red dots showed enemy ships firing on blue dots that represented Volanti positions. Even from this distance, he could see that the aliens, who had called for help, were losing badly. How many enemy ships? Alex asked. 43 confirmed, sir. Maybe more hiding behind the moons. Alex nodded. The Korvax had brought a full invasion fleet. These were not raiders looking for quick profit. They were here to take everything and leave nothing behind. He had seen their work on other worlds. They were very good at destroying civilizations. "Open a channel to the planet," Alex ordered. "Let them know help has arrived." On Kepler 442b, High Counselor Zephys was in the emergency command center deep under the Crystal City. The beautiful towers above ground were already under attack from Korvax scout ships. His people were hiding in shelters, afraid and confused. They had never experienced war before. "High Counselor," Lyrana called from her station. "The human ship is trying to contact us." Zephys felt his hearts beating fast. Hearts, because Volanti had two hearts, just like they had two suns in their sky. He nodded to Lyrana, and she opened the communication channel. The screen flickered and then a face appeared. Zephys had to grip his chair to keep from falling over. The human was terrifying. Captain Rodriguez had dark hair and brown eyes that looked forward like a predator. His face was hard and angular, with lines that came from squinting in sunlight and making difficult decisions. When he spoke, Zephys could see white teeth that looked sharp and dangerous. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Corps ship Resilience," the human said. His voice was deep and rough. "We received your distress call and are here to assist." Zephys tried to find his voice. The human looked like every nightmare his species had about dangerous animals. Predators, hunters, things that killed other things to survive. We asked for peaceful assistance," Zephys managed to say. "We need diplomatic help, not warriors." Alex looked confused. "Sir, you are under attack by the Korvax Empire. They do not negotiate. They take what they want and kill the rest. You need military assistance, not diplomats." Behind Captain Rodriguez, Zephys could see other humans moving around. They all looked the same, tall, strong with muscles that spoke of a world where being weak meant dying. Their eyes were always watching, always alert. These were not peaceful creatures. These were apex predators that had somehow learned to build spaceships. "Captain," Zephys said, his voice shaking, "we are a peaceful people. We do not believe in violence. We solve problems by talking and sharing. Surely there must be a way to reason with these invaders." On the bridge of the Resilience, Alex looked at his tactical officer. Lieutenant Barnes showed him the latest sensor readings. 3 Volanti cities were already burning. Thousands of the blue-skinned aliens were dead or captured. The Korvax were not interested in talking. "Sir," Alex said gently, "I understand your position, but the Korvax have already begun killing your people. Every minute we spend talking is another minute they have to destroy your world." Dr. Stephen Carter stepped into view of the camera. He was Alex's xenobiology expert, a scientist who had studied alien cultures for 20 years. He was supposed to be the friendly face that made first contact easier, but even Carter, who was smaller and gentler than most humans, made the Volanti council members step back in fear. "High Counselor Zephys," Dr. Carter said in his calmest voice, "we come from Earth. Our species has experience with conflicts like this. We know how to stop the Korvax. Please let us help you." When Carter smiled, trying to be friendly, several Volanti in the background fainted. His canine teeth were clearly visible, and to herbivorous aliens, they looked like fangs. Lyrana whispered something to Zephys in their own language. Alex's translator computer picked up the words Death World and Predator Species. "You are from a Death World," Zephys said, his voice full of horror. "You are natural killers. We asked for civilized help." Alex felt a flash of anger, but he controlled it. These aliens were afraid and confused. They had lived in peace for thousands of years. They could not understand that sometimes peace had to be protected by those willing to fight for it. "High Counselor," Alex said, "we are civilized. We do not kill for pleasure or profit. We fight to protect others. Right now your people need protection." Before Zephys could respond, alarms began ringing in the Volanti command center. New explosions lit up the sky above them. The Korvax had begun bombing the capital city. "Sir," Lieutenant Barnes called out, "the enemy fleet is moving to full attack. Formation. They are targeting civilian areas." Alex made a decision that would change everything. Colonel Sullivan to the bridge. Prep all Marines for immediate combat deployment. The screen showed Kate Sullivan entering the bridge. If Captain Rodriguez had frightened the Volante, Colonel Sullivan terrified them completely. She was tall and strong, with scars on her face and hands that spoke of many battles. She wore combat armor that made her look like a walking weapon. Her eyes were cold and calculating as she studied the tactical situation. "Captain," Kate said, "my Marines are ready for deployment. What are our rules of engagement?" "Full combat. Authorization," Alex replied. "Protect Volante civilians, eliminate Korvax forces, no quarter for invaders." Several Volante council members ran from the room when they heard Colonel Sullivan's response. "Understood, sir. My Marines will handle the ground operation while you deal with their fleet." Zephys found his voice again. "Wait, you cannot just attack them. There must be another way. What about negotiations? What about finding a peaceful solution?" Alex looked directly at the Volante leader. "High Counselor, in the past hour the Korvax have killed over 8,000 of your people. They have bombed hospitals and schools. They have captured children for their slave markets. What exactly would you like to negotiate with them about?" On the main screen, they could all see Korvax dropships landing in the Crystal City. Insectoid. Warriors poured out, firing weapons at anything that moved. Volante civilians ran in panic, their blue skin bright against the smoke and fire. "This is what the Korvax do," Dr. Carter said quietly. "They are not here to talk. They are here to take your world and enslave your people. Every species they have conquered asked the same question you are asking. They all wanted to negotiate. None of them survived as free peoples." High Counselor Zephys watched his beautiful city burning. He could hear his people screaming over the communication channels. Everything his ancestors had built over thousands of years was being destroyed in a single day. The Korvax did not care about Volante art or culture or philosophy. They only cared about taking what they wanted. "High Counselor," Alex said, "I know we are not what you asked for, but we are what you need. My people know how to fight species, like the Korvax. We know how to win. Let us help you." Zephys looked at the terrifying human faces on his screen. These creatures were predators. They were natural killers from a world where everything tried to kill everything else. They were exactly the kind of species he had hoped would never find his peaceful world. But they were also the only ones who had come to help. "What will you do?" Zephys asked. Colonel Sullivan stepped forward. Her voice was cold as winter. "We will do what humans do best, High Counselor. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. And we will make the Korvax regret they ever heard of this world." In space above them, Grand Admiral Thrix of the Korvax Empire received reports about the new arrivals. His intelligence officer brought him data about the human ship and its crew. The information was interesting. "Admiral," his aide said, "these humans appear to be from a Clastothene death world. Extreme gravity, violent weather, apex predators. They have been at war with each other for their entire recorded history." Thrix clicked his mandibles in amusement. Another warrior species. He had conquered dozens of them. They always thought they were strong until they met the full might of the Korvax Empire. "Let them come," Thrix said. "We will crush them like all the others. Then we will take their world too." But as he said those words, Thrix felt something he had not felt in many years. A small doubt. A tiny voice in the back of his mind that whispered that maybe, just maybe, he had made a mistake. That voice was right. The TDF Resilience opened fire first. Captain Rodriguez had given the order while the Korvax were still deciding whether the human ship was a threat. Plasma beams and missile salvos lit up space as the human warship engaged 6 Korvax cruisers at once. The Korvax had expected another easy victory. Every species they had conquered before fought the same way, ship against ship, formation against formation, following the old rules of space warfare. The humans did not follow any rules. The Resilience moved like a living thing, rolling and diving through space while its weapons never stopped firing. Captain Rodriguez had learned to fight in the asteroid wars around Mars, where moving in straight lines meant dying quickly. His ship danced between enemy fire while its guns tore holes in Korvax armor. Direct hit on their flagship, Lieutenant Barnes called out. Their shields are down to 60%. Target their weapon systems, Rodriguez ordered. I want them disabled, not destroyed. We need prisoners for intelligence. On the planet below, Colonel Kate Sullivan was preparing for the real fight. Her Marines were loading into drop pods, small armored vehicles that could punch through an atmosphere and land anywhere on a planet's surface. Each pod held 12 Marines with enough weapons and ammunition to fight a small war. Listen up, Kate told her battalion over the communication system. The Korvax have been hitting civilian targets for the past 2 hours. They have taken prisoners and are using them as human shields. Our job is to get those people back and send the bugs a message they will never forget. Lieutenant Ben Torres checked his squad's equipment one more time. He was 28 years old and had been fighting since he was 18. Earth had been at war with somebody for most of his adult life. Pirates, corporate militias, rebel colonies. He knew how to kill, but more importantly, he knew how to protect innocent people. Sergeant Parker, Torres called to his heavy weapons specialist. You ready for this? Lisa Parker was 32 and had grown up in the mining colonies around Jupiter. She had learned to fight in zero-gravity and high-radiation environments. The Korvax homeworlds were supposed to be harsh and dangerous. To her, they sounded like vacation spots. Ready as always, sir, Parker replied. My team has enough firepower to level a city block. Just point us at the bad guys. The drop pods launched from the Resilience like bullets fired from a giant gun. They screamed through the atmosphere of Kepler 442b, their heat shields glowing red as they fell toward the burning capital city of Lumenspire. High Counselor Zephys watched the human pods falling like meteors from his underground command center. Each pod contained 12 soldiers. There were 20 pods. 240 humans were coming to save his world. Against 10,000 Korvax warriors. This is madness, he whispered to Lorana. How can so few fight so many? Lorana was studying the tactical data on her screens. The humans were not attacking randomly. Their pods were landing in specific locations around the city, forming a pattern that surrounded the Korvax forces. It looked like they had a plan. Lieutenant Torres's pod hit the ground first, smashing through the roof of a Korvax command post. Before the insectoid soldiers inside could react, Torres and his squad were out of the pod and firing. The fight was over in 30 seconds. 12 Korvax warriors lay dead. The humans had not lost anyone. Squad 2, this is Squad 1, Torres reported over his radio. Landing zone secured. Moving to Objective Alpha. Objective Alpha was a refugee center where 300 Volanti civilians were trapped. The Korvax had surrounded the building and were using the prisoners to discourage any rescue attempts. It was exactly the kind of situation that humans specialized in solving. Torres and his squad moved through the crystal streets of Lumenspire like ghosts. They had trained for urban combat on Earth, in the ruined cities left over from the corporate wars. They knew how to use buildings and rubble for cover. They knew how to move without being seen. The Korvax had never fought an enemy like this. Most species they conquered fought in large groups, standing in open areas and firing at each other until one side gave up. The humans fought like pack hunters, using teamwork and tactics that the insectoid minds could not understand. Sergeant Parker set up her heavy weapons position on the roof of a collapsed tower. From there, she could see the refugee center and the Korvax guards around it. Her team had rocket launchers, plasma cannons, and electromagnetic pulse grenades. They were ready to provide covering fire for the rescue operation. Torres, this is Parker, she said into her radio. I count 26 hostiles around the building. They have positioned themselves to use the civilians as shields. Copy that, Parker. Wait for my signal. Torres studied the situation through his scope. The Korvax thought they were smart, using innocent people to protect themselves. They thought the humans would be afraid to attack if it might hurt civilians. They were wrong. Human military doctrine was very clear about hostage situations. The safety of innocent people came first. Everything else came second, including the safety of the soldiers doing the rescue. Parker, I need you to take out the guards on the east side of the building, Torres ordered. Precision shots only, do not hit the structure. Understood. Precision elimination in 3, 2, 1. Parker's team opened fire with surgical accuracy. Each shot was aimed and calculated. 5 Korvax guards died in the first second, their bodies falling away from the building. The other guards turned toward the source of the gunfire, exposing themselves to Torres's squad. The lieutenant and his men struck like lightning. They came from 3 different directions at once, using grenades and small arms fire to create chaos among the Korvax positions. The insectoid warriors had superior numbers, but they had never fought an enemy that moved so fast and hit so hard. Inside the refugee center, the Volanti civilians huddled together in terror. They could hear the gunfire outside getting closer and louder. Some of them thought the Korvax were executing more prisoners. Others hoped that somehow their government had found soldiers to fight back. Then the doors exploded inward. A human marine came through the smoke and debris, his weapon raised and ready. The Volanti children screamed when they saw him. To their eyes, he looked like death itself, tall, armored, with a face that showed no mercy for his enemies. But when Private Danny Wright looked at the frightened alien children, his expression changed completely. He lowered his weapon and spoke in the gentlest voice he could manage. "It is okay," he said in carefully practiced Volanti words. "We are here to help. You are safe now." The children did not understand how someone could look so dangerous and sound so kind. Wright knelt down to their level, making himself smaller and less threatening. His translator device helped him communicate with their caretakers. "We are soldiers from Earth," Wright explained. "We came because you asked for help. We are going to get you away from the bad people." Outside, the battle was already over. 26 Korvax warriors had faced 12 human marines. None of the Korvax survived. None of the humans were seriously hurt. The Volanti civilians were free, but this was just the beginning. All across Lumenspire, similar scenes were playing out. Human marines were hitting Korvax positions with speed and violence that shocked both sides. Colonel Sullivan had divided her battalion into small teams that struck fast and moved quickly to the next target. The Korvax had expected a traditional battle. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Human squads appeared out of nowhere, destroyed their positions, rescued their prisoners, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Grand Admiral Thrix received reports from his ground commanders with growing alarm. His forces were not losing, they were being destroyed. Piece by piece, squad by squad, the humans were taking apart his entire ground operation. "How many human soldiers are on the planet?" he demanded from his intelligence officer. "Less than 300, Admiral." Thrix stared at the tactical display. Less than 300 soldiers were defeating 10,000 of his best warriors. It was impossible. No species fought with such efficiency. No army could coordinate so perfectly. But the reports kept coming. Human forces had rescued over 2,000 civilians. They had destroyed 47 Korvax positions. They had captured 3 command posts and were using Korvax equipment against its former owners. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "the human ship is demanding our surrender." Thrix laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "One ship demands that an entire fleet surrender? These humans are insane." But even as he said it, Thrix was looking at his tactical display. His ground forces were almost gone. His fleet had taken heavy damage from the single human warship, and the humans were showing no signs of slowing down. On the surface, Colonel Sullivan stood in what used to be the Korvax main command center. Her Marines had taken it in less than an hour, fighting through 3 levels of heavily defended positions. The Korvax defenders had fought bravely, but they had never faced an enemy like this. "Captain Rodriguez," she reported to the ship, "ground operations are proceeding ahead of schedule. We have secured 60% of the city and freed over 3,000 civilians. Korvax resistance is collapsing." On the bridge of the Resilience, Rodriguez smiled grimly. He had fought the Korvax before. Dr. Stephen Carter sat in the Volanti emergency shelter, trying to explain humanity to a group of terrified alien children. The little ones had been rescued from a Korvax prison camp 3 hours ago. They were safe now, but they were still afraid of the humans who had saved them. "Your people," said Mira, a young Volanti caretaker. "They look like the monsters from our old stories. But they protect us. I do not understand. Carter smiled gently, careful not to show his teeth. He had learned that his canine teeth frightened the herbivorous aliens. We come from a world that was very dangerous. Everything on Earth tried to kill everything else. We had to become strong to survive. So, you are predators, Mira said. Natural killers. Yes, Carter admitted. But we chose to use our strength to protect others instead of hunting them. That is what makes us different. Mira looked confused. In her world, predators were evil creatures from nightmares. The idea that predators could choose to be good was something her mind could not easily accept. Outside the shelter, the war continued. Colonel Sullivan walked through the crystal streets of Lumenspire, watching her Marines secure the city block by block. The Korvax were still fighting, but they were losing ground every hour. Her soldiers moved like they had been born for this kind of work, because they had been. Sullivan stopped at a medical station where Marine medic Sam Brooks was treating wounded Volanti civilians. Brooks was gentle and careful with the injured, aliens using equipment designed for human physiology to help creatures with completely different biology. How are they doing, Brooks? Sullivan asked. They will live, Colonel, Brooks replied. The Korvax use some kind of neural stunner on them. Nothing I cannot handle with the right medications. Sullivan watched Brooks work. An hour ago, this same Marine had killed 6 Korvax soldiers with his bare hands when they tried to execute their prisoners. Now he was carefully bandaging the wounds of alien children, speaking to them in soft tones that he had learned from the translation computer. This was what the Volanti could not understand. Humans could switch between deadly violence and gentle care in the span of seconds. They could be monsters and angels at the same time, depending on what the situation required. High Counselor Zephys received a communication request from Captain Rodriguez. The human wanted to discuss strategy for the final assault on the Korvax positions. Zephys accepted the call, though talking to the predatory human still made his skin crawl. High Counselor, Rodriguez said, my forces have secured most of your capital city. We estimate another 6 hours to clear out the remaining Korvax positions. However, I need to discuss acceptable casualty rates with you. Zephys felt sick. Casualty? Rates? What do you mean? Some of your people are being held in the Korvax command ship in orbit. We can rescue them, but it will require a direct assault. There is a 15% chance that some hostages will not survive the operation. The casual way Rodriguez discussed the possible death of innocent people horrified Zephys. To the human, this was just mathematics, numbers on a tactical display. But those numbers represented real Volanti lives. Is there no other way? Zephys asked. We could try negotiating with the Korvax commander, Rodriguez said. But based on their previous behavior, I estimate a 90% chance that they will execute all hostages rather than release them. Zephys realized he was facing the kind of decision that his peaceful people had never needed to make. Risk some lives to save many lives, or try to save everyone and probably lose them all. It was the sort of choice that predator species made every day. Do what you think is best, Captain, Zephys said quietly. In orbit above Kepler 442b, Grand, Admiral Thrix was learning that humans were even more dangerous than he had thought. His ground forces were almost completely destroyed. His fleet had been reduced to 12 ships, and now the single human warship was demanding his complete surrender. Thrix had decided to send a message that would teach these upstart humans some respect. He had captured 15 human Marines during the ground fighting, and he was going to broadcast their execution to demoralize the human forces. It was the worst mistake of his military career. The captured Marines were brought to the main bridge of Thrix's flagship. They were injured but not broken. Even tied up and beaten, they looked dangerous. Their leader was a sergeant named Mike Garcia, a veteran of the Martian Rebellion. You will tell your ship to surrender, Thrix told Garcia, or I will kill you. Slowly, while your friends watch. Garcia looked at the Korvax admiral with eyes that showed no fear. Go ahead, Bug. My people know what you are. They know what you do to prisoners. You just gave them permission to stop playing nice. Thrix did not understand what Garcia meant until it was too late. The execution was broadcast on all frequencies, so that everyone in the system could see it. Thrix wanted the humans to see their soldiers die. He wanted them to understand that the Korvax Empire was not to be challenged. Instead, he had just taught the humans that the Korvax were not protected by the rules of civilized warfare. Colonel Sullivan received the broadcast while she was planning the final assault on the spaceport. When she saw her Marines being tortured and killed, her face became cold as space itself. "All units, this is Sullivan," she said into her radio. "The enemy has just violated the Geneva Convention by executing prisoners. We are now authorized to use unrestricted rules of engagement. No quarter, no mercy. Make them pay for what they did." The change in human behavior was immediate and terrifying. Before, the Marines had been professional soldiers following military doctrine. They killed, when necessary, and spared enemies who surrendered. They protected civilians and treated prisoners according to international law. Now they became something else entirely. Lieutenant Torres and his squad hit the next Korvax position like a force of nature. They did not ask for surrender. They did not take prisoners. They moved through the enemy defenses like death itself, leaving nothing alive behind them. Sergeant Parker's heavy weapons team stopped being surgical in their targeting. They began using weapons designed to destroy enemy morale along with enemy soldiers. The sound of human plasma cannons became a symphony of destruction that echoed across the city. Private Wright, who had been so gentle with the Volanti children, now fought with a fury that scared even his fellow Marines. The young soldier had liked Sergeant Garcia. They had served together on Europa during the ice pirate campaigns. Garcia had taught Wright how to survive in hostile environments. Now Garcia was dead, and Wright was making sure the Korvax understood the price of killing his friends. Dr. Carter watched the change in human behavior from the safety of the medical station. He tried to explain to Mira what was happening, but the words were difficult to find. "Your soldiers," Mira said. "They are different now, more dangerous." "The Korvax made a mistake," Carter said quietly. "They hurt our people in a way that violated our rules of war. Now my species is showing them why those rules exist in the first place. I do not understand." Carter looked out the window at the burning Korvax positions. "Humans created laws about how to fight wars because we know how terrible we can be when we do not follow those laws. The Korvax just gave us permission to remember why we needed those laws." On the bridge of the Resilience, Captain Rodriguez watched his tactical display as Korvax positions disappeared one by one. His Marines were no longer just winning the battle. They were erasing the enemy from existence. "Captain," Lieutenant Barnes reported, "we are receiving surrender requests from multiple Korvax ships." "Denied," Rodriguez said coldly. "They chose to execute prisoners. They made this personal." Barnes looked surprised. "Sir, our military code requires us to accept surrender when offered." Rodriguez turned to his tactical officer. "Lieutenant, those rules apply when we are fighting civilized enemies who follow the same codes we do. The Korvax just demonstrated that they are not civilized enemies." High Counselor Zephas watched the final destruction of the Korvax forces with mixed feelings. His people were safe. The invaders were being destroyed. But the way the humans fought now was beyond anything he had imagined possible. They were not just winning. They were making an example. Every Korvax ship that tried to escape was hunted down and destroyed. Every ground position that showed resistance was obliterated. The humans were sending a message that would be heard across the galaxy. "Lirana," Zephas said, "what have we unleashed?" Lirana was studying reports from across the system. Human forces were not just defeating the Korvax. They were doing it so completely and brutally that other species monitoring the battle were already sending diplomatic messages to Earth. "High Counselor," she said slowly, "I think we have introduced the galaxy to its new apex predator. And they are on our side." In the Korvax flagship, Grand Admiral Thrix finally understood his mistake. He had thought the humans were just another warrior species that could be intimidated or defeated through superior numbers. Instead, he had found a species that treated war like an art form. The humans did not just fight to win, they fought to make sure their enemies never wanted to fight them again. As his ship's defenses failed and human marines prepared to board his vessel, Thrix sent one final message to the Korvax Empire. It was a warning that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The last Korvax ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Captain Rodriguez watched it burn on his main screen, then turned to his crew. The battle was over. The Korvax Empire had learned what happened when they fought humans. All stop, Rodriguez ordered. Recall all fighters. Send a message to the planet that the system is secure. Lieutenant Barnes looked at his sensor display. In 6 hours of fighting, the humans had destroyed an entire Korvax invasion fleet. 53 enemy ships were gone. Not one had escaped to carry word back to their empire. The humans had made sure of that. Captain, Barnes said quietly, we just destroyed an entire Imperial battle group. The Korvax will call this an act of war. Rodriguez nodded. Lieutenant, the Korvax declared war on us the moment they decided to torture and execute our Marines. Now they know the price of that decision. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Colonel Sullivan walked through the ruins of the Korvax command center. Her Marines were collecting equipment and intelligence data from the enemy positions. The ground war was over. Every Korvax soldier on the planet was dead or captured. But the cost had been higher than anyone expected. The crystal city of Lumenspire was scarred with blast marks and debris. Some of the beautiful towers had fallen during the fighting. The Volanti people were free, but their world would never look the same again. Private Danny Wright found Sullivan in what used to be a Korvax prison camp. She was standing over the bodies of the Marines who had been executed. These men and women had died because they chose to protect strangers on a world they had never seen before. Colonel, Wright said, the Volanti are asking to see you. They want to thank us for saving their people. Sullivan looked at the young Marine. Wright had blood on his armor from the final assault. He had killed more enemies in one day than most soldiers killed in their entire careers. But his eyes still showed the same compassion that had made him gentle with frightened children. Tell them I will be there soon, Sullivan said. I want to finish here first. Wright understood. Every military unit had its own way of honoring fallen comrades. The colonel needed time to say goodbye to the Marines who would never go home to Earth. High Counselor Zephys stood in the emergency command center, looking at reports from across his world. The humans had saved over 50,000 Volanti civilians. They had destroyed every Korvax position on the planet. They had done exactly what they promised to do, but the way they had done it still frightened him. High Counselor, Lorana said, Captain Rodriguez is requesting a meeting to discuss future security arrangements. Zephys nodded. He knew this conversation was coming. The humans had saved his world, but they were not going to just leave and forget about it. They would want something in return. The question was what? An hour later, Zephys met with Captain Rodriguez in the government building. The human captain looked tired but alert. He had been awake for over 30 hours, commanding his ship through the entire battle, but he showed no signs of weakness or fatigue. High Counselor, Rodriguez said, my government has authorized me to offer your people a mutual defense treaty. Earth will provide military protection for your world in exchange for certain agreements. Zephys felt his heart's beating faster. What kind of agreements? Rodriguez pulled out a data pad with the treaty terms. We would like to establish a small military base in your outer system, nothing large. Maybe 50 personnel and a few patrol ships. We would also like permission to recruit volunteers from your population for our diplomatic corps. And in return, any species that attacks Kepler 442b will be considered to be attacking Earth directly. We will respond with full military force. Zephys read through the treaty carefully. The terms were actually quite reasonable. The humans were not asking for tribute or slaves or territorial control. They wanted a base and some diplomats. In exchange, they would make his world too dangerous for anyone else to attack. But Zephys also understood what he would be agreeing to. His peaceful people would be under the protection of the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. They would be safe, but they would never be truly independent again. What if we refuse? Zephys asked. Rodriguez smiled, but there was no warmth in it. High Counselor, that is your choice to make. But I should mention that we intercepted several communications from other species monitoring this battle. Word is spreading quickly about what happened here. Some of those species might decide that a world defended only by Volanti civilians would be an easy target. The threat was subtle but clear. The humans had made Kepler 442b a symbol of their military power. Now every predator species in the galaxy knew that this world was either protected by humans or defended only by helpless civilians. I need time to discuss this with my council, Zephys said. Of course. But High Counselor, I should also mention that 3 more ships are already on their way to this system. They launched the moment our victory was confirmed. They should arrive within the week. Zephys felt a chill. More human ships? 1 human ship, Rodriguez corrected. The other 2 belong to species that think they can take what we just protected. Apparently, not everyone got the message about what happens to people who attack our friends. Dr. Carter was in the refugee center, helping Volanti families reunite with relatives who had been captured by the Korvax. The work was rewarding but difficult. Many of the rescued civilians were traumatized by their experiences. They had seen their peaceful world turned into a war zone in a single day. Mira approached Carter while he was helping translate between a Volanti child and a human medic. The caretaker looked exhausted but grateful. Dr. Carter, she said, the children want to give your soldiers something before you leave. Carter followed Mira to a corner of the shelter where a group of young Volanti were working on an art project. They had used crystals and colored light to create pictures of the humans who had saved them. But the artwork was strange. The children had drawn the Marines as tall figures with wings instead of arms. In each picture, the human soldiers were standing between the Volanti children and dark, threatening shapes that represented the Korvax. They see your people as guardian spirits, Mira explained. In our oldest stories, guardians were powerful beings who protected the innocent, but were too dangerous to live among normal people. Carter looked at the pictures. The children had captured something important about humanity that even adult Volanti struggled to understand. Humans were protectors, but they were also predators. They could be trusted to defend the innocent, but they were too dangerous to be completely comfortable around. Private Wright appeared at Carter's shoulder, looking at the artwork. The young Marine had been popular with the Volanti children because he made an effort to learn their language and customs. They made us look like angels, Wright said quietly. Angels with weapons, Carter replied. I think that might be the most accurate description of humanity I have ever heard. One of the children, a little girl named Nayla, approached Wright with a crystal sculpture she had made. It showed a human figure holding a Volanti child in one arm and a weapon in the other. The message was clear. Protection and violence, care and destruction, all in the same being. Thank you, Wright said in careful Volanti words. I will keep this always. The child smiled and asked a question in her own language. Mira translated. She wants to know why your people came to help us when we said we did not want warriors. Wright thought about the question for a moment. Tell her that sometimes people do not get what they ask for. Sometimes they get what they need instead. 3 days later, High Counselor Zephys signed the Mutual Defense Treaty with Earth. The vote had been close, but the Council eventually agreed that protection from predators was better than being defenseless prey. The TDF Resilience prepared to depart, leaving behind a small garrison of Marines and a promise to return if needed. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge watching Kepler 442b grow smaller on his screen. Captain, Lieutenant Barnes said, we are receiving messages from 17 different species. They all want to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. Rodriguez was not surprised. Word of the battle had spread across the galaxy at light speed. Every civilization was asking the same question. Were the humans conquerors or protectors? The answer, Rodriguez knew, depended entirely on which side of a conflict you were on. Set course for Earth, he ordered, and send a message to command. Tell them we are going to need bigger ships. In the weeks that followed, more species learned what the Volanti had discovered. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were nothing like what anyone had expected. They were predators who chose to protect the innocent. They were warriors who fought for peace. They were monsters who had decided to be heroes instead. The galaxy would never be the same again. High Counselor Zephys stood on his crystal balcony, watching human patrol ships move across the sky above his capital city. His people were safe now. The beautiful towers were being rebuilt. Children played in the streets without fear, but every night he looked up at the stars and wondered what other monsters might be hiding in the darkness between worlds. And every night he was grateful that the most dangerous monsters in the galaxy had chosen to be on his side.